All right, thanks. Yeah, my name is John Lott, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. And I just want to say that everybody wants to try to stop criminals from getting guns. The problem is that there are certain fundamental flaws in the background check system that actually makes it more likely that they end up stopping law-abiding, poor, and minorities than it is to actually stop criminals. If you look at the last 5 years that we have the annual reports for the National Instant Background Check System, there were over 400,000 people that were stopped. Only 460 of those were referred for prosecution, and only 209 successful prosecutions occur. That's well less than 0.1% of these cases. We heard earlier the mention of the number of 3 million. And that's been used a lot of times, but with the right terminology is that you should say that there have been 3 million initial denials, not 3 million dangerous, prohibited people that have been stopped. And the real problem is that it's one thing to stop somebody who's a felon. It's another thing to stop somebody simply because they have a name similar to a felon from being stopped. And that's virtually everybody who gets stopped is a false positive. And if you look at it, it's particularly minorities who are harmed as a result of this. People tend to have names similar to others in their racial groups. Hispanics have names similar to other Hispanics. Blacks tend to have names similar to other blacks. 30% of black males almost are prohibited from owning guns because of past criminal history. Whose names are their names most likely to be confused with? Other law-abiding good black males who want to go and obtain a gun to protect themselves and their families. You know, when you fill out the 4473 form to buy a gun, you put down your name, your social security number, your race, your height, your address, and your birthday. And you think all that information is being used. In fact, what you find is that they use roughly phonetically similar names. So somebody who's John Smith with an I and Smith with a Y and an E, as far as the National Instant Background Check System is concerned, those are the same last names. These things can be fixed, but they're not. And the problem with having these additional background checks is you're going to make more false positives so that many of the most vulnerable people are going to be stopped from buying guns. The second issue is the cost that's involved. In Washington, D.C., for example, neighbor here, in order to do a background check on a private transfer, it costs $125. There are places in the country where you can have it done for as cheaply as $55. Background checks normally cost money, but you don't see it for most background checks because it's not like a sales tax that you add on top of the purchase of the gun. It's in the price of the gun. And whether it's $55 or $125, the problem is it's basically poor individuals. Many of the people who are living in high crime urban areas, that may be enough to prevent them from being able to legally go and buy a gun to protect themselves and their families. Again, I would argue this is something, as an economist, that could be fixed. The question is, who should pay for these background checks? Should it be the law-abiding individual who goes out of their way to go and have the check being done? Or should, if you believe that it reduces crime, and I don't, but if you believe that it does, then it benefits everybody. And it seems like at that point it should be paid for out of general revenue rather than making the particularly law-abiding individual who you probably don't have anything to worry about go through the process and bear that cost. And so you could pay for it out of general revenue. If you really believe that this is a benefit, that the benefits are greater than the cost, and pay for it out of general revenue would be an easy amendment to fix that. And I'll mention two final things. One is the polls. They've put this on the ballot in many places. In November 2016, it was on the ballot in 2 states, Nevada and Maine. It lost by 4 percentage points in Maine. It won by 0.8% in Nevada. In both cases, the proponents with Michael Bloomberg outspent the opponents by either 9-1 or 6-1. And so to go and cite polls where they say that there's 90% support or 80% support, I would go and argue there's no place where this has been on the ballot where you get anything even remotely close to that in terms of support. And finally, just the research. There's no peer-reviewed study by an economist that finds that background checks reduce crime. There's overwhelming research by criminologists, peer-reviewed, finds no benefit. And there's a simple reason. If I had time, I'd go through that, but I was told to limit it to 5 minutes. But I appreciate your time here.
Well, Dr. Lott, I appreciate your coming and joining us this morning. And I don't know whether other members of the committee know who you are, but maybe they want to look you up on Wikipedia. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate your investment of time.